Hey everybody, Sam Frentzas here from the Med-Legal Greenroom and co-founder of the Driving Force Company. Pretty excited to have attorney extraordinaire, as I say, and we go way back, so I'm the only one that can say that. Steve Riley from Atticus Advantage. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Hey man, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the hard work you're doing helping my brothers and sisters of the bar build their practices. So thanks for the hard work you're doing.
Oh man, I appreciate that. And look, we go back because I've actually referred some attorneys, I'm going back like 2017, 2018, that are having thriving practices. And I know during COVID, everybody falls off the radar. But I was speaking out in New York, and then I have these young attorneys come to me, and I'm like, where do I send you? How do you go follow in the footsteps? I'm like, Steve Riley. I'm like, call like go there, man. Don't I'm not gonna help you out, but listen, go follow in the footsteps of those who have been successful. That's where you want to go. And long and behold, here we are. So I'm glad that happened because then we're able to get you on the podcast. We got a great subject today, which I think is pretty cool, called How to Scale Over the Grind Wall When Working Harder Stops Working. And to give our audience a little bit about Steve here. So, Steve, you're a former trial lawyer who's tried more than 100 cases before selling your practice in 2012 to join Atticus, where you later became a partner. And then today, I think Atticus works with over 600 law firms across the country, helping solo and small firm attorneys build a great practice and a great life to go with that. I think everybody misses that piece of it, which is really important. And of course, Steve, you host a great practice, great podcast, great practice, great life podcast followed by attorneys around the world. And you're the author of several books on building a thriving practice. And folks, if you're going to learn more, you're going to go to Atticus Advantage and Great Practice, Great Life podcast, which we'll put the links below here at the end. But Steve, welcome. That is, look, I've known you for a long time. You've changed a lot of lives. So, and that's pretty cool because I've witnessed it. I've
Thank
sent
you.
people over, and here they are almost a decade later. And look, they're being successful. I know they don't teach a lot of this side of stuff in law school, like medical school. They teach you to become a doctor, a healer. In law school, they don't, they teach you the law. They don't teach you about operating a business on that side of it. So to me, I think that was pretty cool. And let's talk about grind wall. So, listen. What do you mean by that?
It's a great question. Thank you. So this conversation is applicable regardless of whether you're a lawyer, attorney, uh, doctor. It doesn't really matter. It's really anybody who's in a position with their life where they've tried to grow and they've grown to a point where they start to make it feel like a grind, like they're grinding and they've hit a wall. And what I usually see this happen in small practices, and it's somewhere between 3 to 4 employees, maybe if it's 6 to 8 employees. The lawyer has hit a wall. And they start to complain about it being a grind, and they start to talk about it being burned out and worn out. And regardless whether you're a physician or a lawyer, we're trained as professionals to solve a particular type of problem. We've never been trained on how to run the business side. So you have to remember when you're looking at the practice, you have the technical side, how you fix the problem. Everything else is the process of running the business that collects money to fix the problem. And academically, lawyers, physicians were really, really well trained. Typically, we're in the upper 1%, 2%, 3% of society intellectually, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to run a business. So everything that our company does at Atticus is about how to run the business side of a law practice. And that's really what we teach, the business skills of time management, uh, business skills of cash flow and profitability, the business skills of building a great team, and the business skills of finding and developing great clients. So that's really the business skills. What usually happens, and we like to call it a grind wall, is that usually people start to work really hard. And when you hire your first employee, life's pretty good. They're helping you and you're growing, you're getting some more cases. You might have 20 or 30 or 40 cases, and you might have 10 to 15 referral sources. And life's pretty good. You're like, okay, this thing's working for me. And you start making a little bit of money. And then you say, well, this is kind of working, so I'll hire 2 more people. So now it's you and 3 people. Now, with more people, you have to take on more cases. So you go from maybe 50 cases to 150 cases. And you go from maybe 10 referral sources to 30 referral sources. And then, business gets going and things get busy and you start working harder to try and catch up with the volume of work, phone calls, emails, etc. And then you're like, wow, geez, this thing's getting a little out of control. I'm going to hire some more people. And so what you end up doing is hiring maybe three more people. So you have six people. Now you're getting six times the emails from your staff. You probably have 300 cases now, maybe 400 cases. You probably have 100, 150 referral sources. So what happens is the business that you built at stage one of your practice, maybe getting you to $1 million in gross revenue, it starts to consume you and you start to feel like you hit the wall. You start to grind, you start to burn out. And what usually everybody tries to do, because it's what we're taught to do, is to work harder. And so what we try and do at this point of the stage is to work our way through the wall. And what we recommend is not to work your way through the wall, but to actually scale the wall, Sam. So before I go further, does this make sense to you?
Yeah, and I was going to say, look, why doesn't working harder fix it?
Because it's a great question. The strategies that you have to get you to that level of practice aren't the strategies that will get you to the next level of practice. So if you have $1 million practice and you're trying to get to $5 million practice, the business skills shift. And where lawyers get confused or anyone gets confused, we get time management and focus management confused. So focus management is why you do something. Time management is how you do something. So effectiveness is around the why. Like, why am I doing this? Efficiency is around the how. And sometimes what we do is we start to really grind on the time management side and work more. And what we've done is kind of created a complex problem for ourselves. So like the firm that we have is maxed out. We can't work more hours. We can't work more time. Some lawyers, if they're billing by the hour, might be doing 2,400 billable hours at this point in time. If they're a plaintiff lawyer, they're just fried. And I've been there, I've done it. And what usually happens is you start to burn out. The only solution, I should say the only solution, my strongest recommendation is to use this acronym for scale, scaling the wall. So here's the first level of the SAM. The first level is letter S. S is for C. You can't fix what you can't see because you can't solve the problem you've created because you're inside the problem. So the first move is really to block some time on your calendar. Every week is what I recommend, somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour, to take a step back and actually look at the calendar and ask yourself, why am I doing these things? So looking at your calendar at a glance, you would really be looking at like, why am I doing it? You know how, but need to know why. You need to really take a step back and go, why am I doing certain things? You won't see it while you're doing it. This is one of the reasons I recommend to a lot of lawyers to use paper planners because they can really sit down and kind of diagram the week, like pen to paper,
Yeah.
old school. And there's a lot of research that shows that your, cognitive function improves, your problem solving improves, your memory improves when you start to use handwriting versus typing or electronics. And we're all built inside electronic systems. So the first thing you have to do is take a step back and see and literally look at the calendar, whether it's a month at a glance, a week at a glance is usually what I recommend to start with. And look and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Like, what are these appointments? Why are these appointments on my calendar? And start to really see what's going on. Now, you don't make any decisions yet. The first stage is to see. So on our scaling model, S is to see, look, and ask, why are you doing these things? Any questions about Sam? Does that make sense to you?
No, 100%. And I'm looking at my calendar because I do it. I'm the old school, trader from the mercantile exchange. So it was trading in the pits with pen and paper. To this day, that's what I use. We do have all the electronics, but I trust that pen to paper first and foremost. So, all right, I'm checking the first box that I'm doing something right right off the bat. So that's good.
The second letter is C of our acronym scale. C is to choose. And you really need to kind of look at the week at a glance and say, does this really require me? Is this something that only I can do? is this the highest leverage use for me? And sometimes what we start to do is apply an economic test. So I usually encourage lawyers to increase the value of their cases. So when I was a young lawyer, I may say, okay, I'm only going to work on $500 cases. And then I work my way up to only working on, $1,000 cases and 3,000, 5,000, and then 10,000. And so you start working your way up and looking at your effective hourly rate during the week. You look at what you're working on and you start to question, what am I really doing here with my time? And sometimes you start to notice that you've chosen or people have chosen certain activities for you. So really what you want to do is take a step back and say, okay, looking at the calendar, is this really the best use of my time? Can I choose to use my time more effectively? Now, don't panic when you first do this because you may look and go, hmm, hmm, how do I get out of this? Because I'm in cases I shouldn't be in. I'm in meetings I shouldn't be in. I'm in activities I shouldn't be in. Because when you had two employees in 50 cases, there were certain types of activities you needed to do. But when you have 6 to 8 employees in 150 or 300 cases, the activities that you need to be involved in shift. For like a trial lawyer, you may start to split your firm between pre-lit and lit. And if you're a litigation guy, you may be saying, okay, somebody needs to be in charge of the pre-lit department, and I should be only litigating certain cases. And then which cases should you be litigating? Are you a regular trial horse? Somebody goes to court on a regular basis, like once a month? Are you kind of a light trial litigator? You go once a quarter, or maybe once or twice a year. Those types of calendars are radically different, and how they choose to operate and structure their weeks are radically different. So you have to kind of look at yourself as a practitioner, as a lawyer, as somebody who's building a business, and say, where do I get the greatest leverage during the week? How do I have the greatest impact? What are the things I really enjoy doing? And that takes a little bit of time to kind of take a step back and look and get your brain wrapped around, am I approaching this? Am I choosing the right cases? Am I choosing the right time? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, you're starting to build that framework, which is something I like as we have it here. So as this is going, I'm seeing this framework being built
Yeah.
and a process to follow, which is pretty cool.
We usually call the framework a time template, and we usually do a time template for a week or a month or a quarter at a
Okay.
glance. But it's usually, like you said, it's a perfect framework.
Yeah.
A is for align. So we're scaling. We've gone S for C, C for choose. Now A is align. Now that your calendar is visible, and it doesn't really reflect what you say that matters. You have to kind of look at it and say, how do I realign my calendar to make sure it does get aligned with what matters? This is somewhat hard to do because you're changing the direction of your boat while it's midstream. Once you're in these activities, it's very difficult to suddenly tell your staff, oh, no, 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 I'm going to do this, this, and this. Depending on how many cases you're carrying, depending on what you're working with, depending on your role inside the firm, it may take you anywhere from 30 days to a quarter to repivot your activities to get them aligned with where you think your highest impact activities are. Now, for me, for a lawyer, if I'm coaching a lawyer, I'm going to look at two things: bringing a business and high impact cases. And so I want to make sure that my lawyers are in a position where they're marketing, and whether that's working with physicians, working with referral sources, working with clients, or if they're in a high impact position where they're mediating, going to court, working on high level demands, whatever that role may be, depending on the type of case. So it's hard sometimes, Sam, because sometimes you have clients that have um, 300 employees, 100 employees, and I have clients that are new that might have 4 to 5 employees as they're starting to niche and build their firm. So a person who's running a 100-person firm isn't running it the same way a person who's running a 300-person firm,
Yeah.
and they're not running it the same way somebody who's running a 3-person firm. So this is one of the things I always have to kind of temper my feedback on, because as the lawyers listening, they're going like, well, you don't understand this, you don't understand that. No, I do understand, but as you look at the context of your firm and how you're trying to choose your activities inside that firm, it's different leverage points at different points in your practice. And this is also, for me, why we say great practice, great life. because some lawyers want to try cases, some lawyers don't. Some lawyers want to build a very lucrative factory, and some lawyers want to be going to court as much as they possibly can. That's part of the beautiful thing about practicing law. You get to choose what your life looks like. You get to choose how you do these things. You have the freedom to do that in the way that works for you. So A is important for alignment. Any feedback before I jump to the next one?
No, and this is kind of what I talk about and follow in the footsteps of those in front of you that have done this and done it successfully. So you're not kind of reinventing the wheel on your own. You're following in the footsteps of someone who's done it successfully. Because look, we know what it means if you try something and it fails, the time and the money it costs of that failure. And that's why I like following in those footsteps. What I talk about is that somebody already built it. Somebody's already
Absolutely.
doing it. You want to follow that because again, you don't have to reinvent that wheel. And then find your own niche in there as well. Because I think you're going to be able to find things about yourself as well. Instead of running around with all that activity, you start getting some productivity done. I think you'll find out really what type of lawyer, or even for that matter, business owner you are when you go through this.
It's perfect, Sam. The confusion between activity and results is an important one because sometimes lawyers get busy confused with successful. And being able to take a step back and say, okay, what do I really need to do to make my practice impactful? And how do I really want to spend my time in this practice? So our company's been around for 35 years and we have all kinds of strategies, or I like to call them strategic shortcuts, because that's really what people are paying us for. Like, how do I get from point A to point B as quickly, cheaply, and easily as possible? And you nailed one big issue. A lot of it's an emotional thing. So you have to work through some emotional issues. How do you want to run your business? How do you want to live your life? Those are more difficult questions for me right now at this stage of my career. As long as I got somebody who's clear where they're going, what they're doing, I'm much more like a mechanic. Like if I'm much more like a mechanic, I can understand how to operate the practice. If they're not sure where they're going, if they're not sure what they're doing, then it takes longer because they have uncertainty about what they're building. So it's a very important thing to have great clarity about where you want your life to go, what you want, how you want to live your life, because then you can build a practice that serves your life and not build a practice that basically enslaves your life. So, great point, Sam. So, you ready for L?
I'm ready for all.
L is limit. So, you have to say no to certain things. No, maybe to certain types of cases. I would say nothing impacts the profitability of a plaintiff's firm than case selection. And sometimes when you're a young lawyer, you say yes to everything. And as you really get older and you start to learn the value of a great case, what it takes to work up a case, the cost of carrying a case, how long it takes to get paid on a case selection becomes probably the most critical part of your intake. Understanding really what you need to do to take that case from intake to check and disbursement, it takes a while to learn and really appreciate there's some work there and there's some carrying costs there and there's some, risk to that. And lawyers, generally, myself being a recovering plaintiff's lawyer, we're always optimistic. We're like gamblers. We generally believe that the next pull at the slot machine will be better than the last one. And it doesn't always work that way. A lot of it has to do with how you get cases referred in, how you work up cases, how you market for cases, what your competitors are doing. A lot of things are shifting now with AI. Generative AI is really making it easier to be a plaintiff's lawyer. It's probably the easiest it's ever been to be a plaintiff's lawyer, but it's the hardest it's ever been to get a great case. So we have to keep these things um, in perspective. So for me,
Yeah.
L is limit. Sometimes you have to really limit what you're doing as a young lawyer trying to build a case, or build a practice. You have to limit the types of cases that you're taking. You have to really get more and more focused. I'm a big fan of niching your practice, getting really clear what type of practice you want, type of work you want to do. I don't think there's a lot of really skilled trial lawyers that can do everything. A lot of the trial lawyers I work with have their own niches, whether it's uh, med mal in a particular area, like brain damaged baby cases, or um, products liability cases, or some firms just specialize in straight up good old fashioned all American car accidents. You got to get clear on your lane, how to develop that lane, and how to develop that niche. So any feedback on that, Sam?
No, and that look that the limit I think is a really key component because again, you start saying yes to everything, and it just at the end of the day, you're spinning your wheels and you're spinning them hard, and that's where you see all the activity in the world and very limited productivity. And you're right, because again, somebody that I know that you guys worked with, they were awesome at doing that. This is 9 years ago, and where they are now. It's just amazing. I wish I had permission to use their name. I didn't even think about it. Um, but like you said, I don't want to mess with attorneys, even though it's a compliment. But I've witnessed it. I've known you guys for a long time. And this is the stuff that they don't teach. And this is why I just keep grinding it out. That it, look, in business, a doctor, lawyer, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, you can take this process and I'm geared more for attorneys because this is your expertise. But that limit is really, really key and it can't go overlooked. And I know each letter means something, but I think that one is really, really key because it'll allow you to focus and be able to go and scale bigger without working harder.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I always keep trying to remind everybody you can't beat the grind by grinding harder. So you have to say no to something. And usually you want to say no to the less profitable cases, the cases that don't interest you, the cases that cost you more to carry, maybe the cases with a really bad carrier on the other side. You have to really get choosier to get more profitable. And that's difficult because a lot of lawyers confuse volume with profitability.
Yeah.
So you really have to get clearer on your mind what you take in. Now, you may have a high volume marketing funnel, but it doesn't mean that you should take everything. It was the biggest mistake I made as a young lawyer, is taking a lot of different cases that I really didn't understand the economics of. I really didn't understand what I was doing. And they cost me money. They cost me money. There were just really bad cases where I thought somebody was wronged and there was terrible liability, poor injuries, and I was outraged by the wrong, but it was a terrible case, just a terrible case.
Yeah.
And I see lawyers do it all the time. I'm like, no, 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 that's just a bad case, guys. That's really a bad case. Don't take that case. So let me talk to you about the last one. I don't want to overstay my welcome. E is for execute. So we talked about scale, SCALE. E is for execute. And execute is just get it done. And you really have to have a ruthless focus about getting some things done. Sometimes what happens as lawyers is we get distracted. And another case comes in the door, another opportunity comes in the door. And sometimes we get distracted on how to get from point A to point B in a very, very simple manner. I usually encourage lawyers, especially plaintiffs' lawyers, to focus on their cash flow. And I know that sounds easy and obvious, but one of the tools that we teach lawyers is a tool called the cash flow focuser. Now, it's a pretty straightforward tool, but lawyers who come to the plaintiff's field, or any field from that perspective, that were trained as associates are calendar driven. And so what I mean by that is they look at their calendar and they go, wow, what do I need to do this week? A lawyer who's driven by cash flow will look at their most profitable cases and go, what do I have to do to move my best cases forward? It's a different mindset. So
Yeah.
moving your best cases forward versus what's on your calendar is a different mindset. Now, it may sound like the same, but it's not. My experience, especially working with plaintiffs lawyer, being a recovering plaintiffs my lawyer myself, is that sometimes we get calendar driven confused with cash flow driven. So if you really look at your firm and you look what your best cases are from a liability perspective, from a damages perspective, and say, okay, these are my top 10 cases. What do I have to do to move those cases forward? Radically different than saying, I've got a hearing coming up on this case or that case, or, I got a trial scheduled. Those are things that you have to respect and have to do, but those are activity driven, not cash flow driven. They're calendar driven, not cash flow driven. I see defense lawyers when they go into the plaintiff side really have a difficult time with being cash flow driven because they've been calendar driven for so long. So it's a big distinction. So for me, the scale is S. What do you see? And look at your calendar. C is to choose and choose what's going to be high impact. A is for align. You got to look at that calendar and make sure your activities are completely aligned. L's limit. which means that you have to say no to certain things, could be certain activities, certain types of cases, certain types of people. I'll give a really hard one here, Sam. Um, when I was practicing, I had a lot of friends. My office was right next to a Starbucks. So it was constantly my friends would drop by and try and drag me out of my office to Starbucks. And my team would say things to me like, is that a friend or a referral source? And I would say, oh, it's a referral source. They go, well, they haven't sent you a case in a year. And I'm like, well, then I guess it's a friend. And they're like, do you go to coffee with referral sources or friends? I'm like, good point. And I'm like, tell my friends I'll see you on the weekend, I'll see you after work. But my referral sources I have to make time for. And if I couldn't convert a friend to a referral source, then I had to prioritize my referral sources over my friends. And I know that sounds strange, but a lot of lawyers would hang out with their friends, but never get a lot of great referrals from their friends. So you really have
Yeah.
to start asking yourself, how do you limit where you're spending time on things that are not productive, including people? Ease execute, which is a ruthless focus on getting things done. So I don't want to overstay my welcome. Any questions or thoughts that you have about that? I know that you want to keep it a tight podcast.
Yes, but I want to look, you've given a great information, so that's awesome. But I like to pull maybe one or two little gold nuggets, as I call it. Because while I got you here, I want to get in that brain. So what do you think? And I'm going to target attorneys for this. So what do you think the biggest mistake you see attorneys make when they hit that grind wall?
Working harder and working longer.
So just
It's
again,
the
the old
it's
adage
I
again,
know
just
I know it's how we're trained. And most lawyers, if I say to them, what do you bring the table that's unique? They'll tell me they work harder than anybody they know, which is every single lawyer I know. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make you unique. That makes you like every single lawyer I know. So you have to understand that doesn't make you unique. That strategy got you through law school. It got you to where you're at right now. It got you to the feeling of grinding against the grind wall, but it doesn't make you unique. It's a skill that got you to where you're at. So you really have to take a step back as a business person, not as a young associate, not as an attorney, but a step back and say, actually, what does make me unique in the marketplace? Why would somebody hire me over another lawyer who's just like me, who's going to say what makes them unique is how hard they work? And so
that's good advice.
it's a big difference. It took me years to realize that my clients didn't want me to win cases. My clients wanted me to resolve cases as favorably as possible to them. It's a
That is
major
awesome.
distinction. It's a major distinction between trying to outwork the competition and finding leverage points in the case to get the case resolved as quickly and as effectively for your client as possible versus trying to win. It took me a while. I'm a little slow, but it took me a while. So that would be my first feedback on that.
That is awesome. And then one final question. So if somebody's listening right now and realize, hey, I've hit that grind wall, what's the first thing you'd say that they should do this week? What's the one thing that they should do? Let's leave them here with some really for them to take a little action and do something this week.
Well, I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions. One is if you hit the grind wall and you're like, I need help now, go to Atticus Advantage and take advantage on our website of just talking to one of our coaches for no charge. If you want more information about us, go to Atticus Advantage and sign up for our newsletter or just hang out and hit our podcast. Great practice, great life. We've got a couple of hundred episodes that have everything from success stories to tips, the things that may help you. But it really depends where you're at. Some lawyers like suffering and they do truly like to suffer and they believe that they haven't suffered enough. And when they get in enough pain, then they'll pick up the phone and call us. And that's been my
Okay.
experience. It usually takes about 1 to 2 years. If someone's really trying to make a difference today, like if they listen to this episode, I'm going to say sit down, whether it's 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and look at your calendar at a glance and take three different color markers, a green marker, a yellow marker, and a pink marker. Print out your calendar and highlight green where you're like, this is a money appointment. This appointment makes us money. Yellow being maybe, maybe not. And pink, because you can't color your marker, you can't color your calendar in red. Highlight where you're like, this is a This doesn't make me any money. So it might be appointment with a staff member, might be, a vendor coming in to sell you something. It might be, you screwing around doing, as my friend Jan Copley calls it, unfocused dithering on a listserv, seeing what people are posting. But really get honest with yourself. Most lawyers, when we start working with them, only about a third of their time is green. And what you're trying to do is shift your behavior, shift your focus, and shift your calendar to green. So if you want to quickly take an X-ray, I would break out those color markers, print out your calendar at a glance, maybe a couple of weeks, and just sit there and mark and say, what does it look like? What does it look like? And then ask yourself, well, where is this working for me? Like, where am I making money? Where am I not making money? What can I do immediately to start to improve my focus? Because that's a focus management conversation. If you're looking at your calendar, it's a time management activity. If you're looking at the whys on your calendar, like, why am I doing this? That's a focus management activity. And a lot of lawyers get those two things collapsed. My partners, Mark and Sean, wrote the best-selling book on time management for lawyers, and and their techniques and strategies for time management are fantastic in the book, but ultimately you have to get clear on what's your why. What are you doing? And so looking at the calendar, highlighting those things, start to tell you, why am I doing that activity versus that activity versus that activity? And for me, the colors speak to me. Like if I look at my calendar a week at a glance or a couple of weeks, and I look and I'm like, oh my goodness, a third of my calendar is green, a third's yellow, and a third's red or pink, that
That's not
may
good.
require me to take a big step back. And in this moment, I'm taking a huge look at the sea. I'm seeing what the calendar looks like. And then I have to get, I got to choose what do I need to redo. Then I have to get realigned, right? And then I've got to limit what do I have to get rid of that's yellow and, pink. And then I've got to execute and change all that. Depending on how many people you employ, how many cases you have, how deep your trial calendar is, it may take a while, but that's the easiest and quickest way to just get a quick glimpse of scale for you is print it out, hit the markers, look at it, and take a step back and go, what's working, what's not working about it.
That's awesome. Thank you. And guys, look, click the link below. You're going to see atticusadvantage.com. This is great information. You can get there. And then, of course, highly recommend go to Great Practice, Great Life podcast. I actually went there, started going through a bunch of them. Really great information for everyone. So, Steve, thank you so much for sharing. This was beyond valuable, especially to all the attorneys that are out there that are listening, that our members are working with. This is exactly why you do what you do. You're changing lives. Appreciate
Thank,
that.
thank you, Sam. Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate being
You
here.
got it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Remember, click the link below. Go to advantage or atticusadvantage.com or Great Practice, Great Life podcast and see for yourself. Thanks, everybody.